Hello, I'm Georgia Shakti-Hill, and I'd like to welcome you to Living in Balance on Shakti-Hill. Exciting program today. I am so much looking forward to it. Sometimes we can learn how to live in balance from reading wonderful books. The author today is Ted Andrews, author, teacher, storyteller. Learning to live in balance on Shakti-Hill. Come join us. It's hard to know where to begin with Ted Andrews because there is so much to cover, but first we will welcome him.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
We're surrounded by your books and your tapes and this incredible wealth of information you have shared with people.
I know I don't always see them all spread out like this. It's a little intimidating for me.
Yes, but each one I'm sure you remember having written, and
Oh,
so
absolutely.
there's pearls of wisdom that could be shared. If you were to say why you write the books, I mean, what motivates you to be such a prolific author?
No social life. There's a lot of different reasons. I think it was never an area that I intended to be my life and to be, it was more of an avocation rather than a vocation, and it just kind of took me and kept me going.
Well, it is exciting to see that you have, I think, 6 more titles of books that are upcoming. You just can't stop.
Well, it's interesting because one always leads to another, which leads to another, which leads to another, and they're ultimately all connected on some level. And it's just different facets of different aspects of my life and what catches me and what I use for balance and what I use for my own self and my own life.
Well, one that we're going to talk about specifically today is the one about unicorns, and that is this, The Treasures of the Unicorn. And what I found fascinating about it is you are the storyteller, and you start out with a personal story.
With a personal story, which I don't usually do a lot of personal stories in my books, but it was one that, in fact, it was a subject I'd never intended to write about, and I was just more and more, and it kept showing up in dreams again, and so I thought it was time to bring it out because I was also encountering a great many of people that were having encounters with unicorns and didn't understand what was going on.
And you actually had a mystical experience as a
child. I had
boy.
several encounters. I was fortunate when I was 6 years old, my family moved out of the inner city and we moved into an area that was nothing but woods and fields and ponds and 2 or 3 other houses within a mile. And I had, about the time I was 6 or 7, an encounter with the unicorn in the woods. And then later on, around the time I was 12 or 13, I had a second encounter. And it always stuck with me, but it was always something that I didn't think I was ever supposed to share.
Yes. And that's an interesting aspect, isn't it? When you have a powerful personal experience, does it dissipate the energy to share it, or is it time?
Right. And I wasn't even concerned about dissipating the energy.
Yeah.
And I wasn't even concerned about the raised eyebrows because I get those all the time anyway because of some of the other subjects I write about. So it was just more of, it was a need to bring it out and to help me put it in perspective and to help others be able to put their own experiences in perspective. Because it's a very dynamic icon in regards to healing. Even if you don't ever believe that there is an actual unicorn, just the archetypal imagery will stimulate tremendously powerful and yet gentle healing.
Now, when you decided to write the book, then, for example, did you do research all over the world of the unicorn and the history of the unicorn?
Oh, absolutely. And I research all of my books. I mean, it doesn't come channeled or anything along this line. But what I did is, as I began to explore it, my undergrad work is in ancient literature and linguistics. And I would often find that in translating and working with old manuscripts and such, I would find things in there that would capture my interest. And I would see common threads and common teachings that were being held and taught all over the world. And even with the unicorn, there is what I call the phenomena of common threads. Teachings that were held in every tradition upon this planet. To the Japanese, it was the Kirin. To the Chinese, the Keelan. To the Middle East, it was the Karkadan. To us, it's the unicorn. There are even stories about this strange deer and horse-like character in the Hopi tradition with the spear that comes out of the front of its head. So we find this kind of universal imagery in every tradition. And when we have that kind of universal teaching among traditions that have had no contact with each other, it should make little bells go off. It says, look, we've got something wonderful here. We should be paying attention.
That's the archetype. And then, as you said, reading the book, one could be healed in a sense if they had questioned it, or they could get information about it if they thought they'd had an experience of a unicorn, or
and
just the idea behind the unicorn.
Would open up to some of the most dynamic healing, because almost universally every tradition taught that the most amazing aspect of this creature was the fact that it was the gentlest of all the creatures that walk the earth. It could walk upon the grass without breaking it, and that it would stimulate tremendous healing. And I think it's even more important today because we live in a society where we think that we have to suffer and we have to martyr ourselves in order to grow. And the unicorn teaches us that suffering is only good for the soul if it teaches us how not to suffer.
Oh, okay.
We can open up and we can heal very gently and very powerfully, though.
And that's what many of your books are dedicated to, the whole concept of healing. And we use healing in a broad sense.
Absolutely. Because, we cannot really be pinpointed. I mean, we are physical, we're emotional, we're mental, we're spiritual. We are so multidimensional that we need to use the word healing from a broad sense, one that is more holistic, one that is more complete.
Well, we're doing a series on healing, and I was talking with my associate producer, and I said, I could have done the whole series with Ted. We're healing with sound, healing with color, healing with music, vibration. And you have written books about all of this. And you have also the Healer's Manual, I know it's one of the really neat books too, that go through all the different modalities.
Right, and how to combine them. And I think that that's very important. My strongest background's in music therapy, and because I have a very strong musical background, classical music background, and music helped me to tie together a lot of the metaphysical and spiritual principles, because I saw them playing in the way just a piece of music would come together and to flow, and the responses that I would experience within my body as I was playing or listening. And so I wanted to understand why this was going on, and it helped me to pull it all together.
And so the other book that we're talking about a lot today is Music Therapy for Non-Musicians.
Right.
Why non-musicians?
Because most people get intimidated by the idea of music because they don't feel like they play an instrument, they don't really understand music, they know what they like, but they don't understand how to work with it. And so I made it for non-musicians to be less intimidating, because we can, just by learning to, in a focused manner, listen to music, that will have an effect, because we live in a time in which we know today that different rhythms, different tones, different pitches will affect different systems and different organs of the body. It's what makes living at this particular time in history so amazing, because we have that blending of metaphysics and science like we've never had before.
And also what we keep finding is that science is supporting the metaphysical concepts that we've had for a while now. It's provable.
Absolutely, and that's what makes it fun, because science and scientists who used to scoff and raise their eyebrows and make fun of the metaphysical mumbo-jumbo are now having to re-examine the truths. We know, for example, at these 7 points of the traditional chakras that they used to make fun of, that there's a higher degree of electromagnetic emanations from the body at those points. And it's all measurable, it's all very detectable, and so science is having to reevaluate their former positions.
And this book, The Music Therapy for Non-Musicians, that's actually a manual that one can go and look up, like a body system, and see what music would help heal that. And there is a correlation between the part of the body and a particular type of music?
Yes, different rhythms, different rhythmic styles, different tones, different pitches, and different pieces of music. Some of the classical composers were very schooled in how the metaphysical aspects of music and how it would affect the human body, and compose pieces in order to enhance that. And of course, we're living at a time where we've got the scientific measurement of physiological responses to different musics. We know, for example, that in a lot of cardiac surgeries anymore, they are playing Baroque music, and they're finding that when this is done, that there's less bleeding during the surgery and the recovery time is accelerated. Baroque rhythms are very strengthening and stabilizing to the heart rhythms, and it's a wonderful thing to utilize. And it's just simple things. So we can go to the library, get a piece of music, take it home. We can make copies of pieces of music good for every system of the body.
And I think that's absolutely fascinating, because if the physician, the surgeon, will incorporate it then into his actual practice and during surgery, and then one heals so much better, how simple and how wonderful.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Oh, now you are a Renaissance man, and you said classical music, education, counseling was your background.
Yes.
You could have played the bamboo flute for us today.
Had I brought it.
There is even ballet.
Yes, I do still study ballet.
And kung fu.
And kung fu.
When we talk about living in balance, and you are so busy with your writing, then are all these aspects of your life then very helpful to keep you?
Oh, very much so. They all kind of intertwine with each other. And one of the things I included, for example, in the music therapy book was specific physical movements that we can do that will enhance and strengthen the systems, and that we can perform almost like a dance to the specific kind of music, so that we can strengthen and balance a particular organ or system.
Yes, and you've also written a book that was just about movement and dance somewhere.
Yes, called Magical Dance. And
Right.
it was about specifically on how we can use movement from everything to creating an altered state of consciousness, to opening up to spiritual perceptions, to so many different activities, because the human body is meant to move.
Yes, and I just went back to dance this year because I had missed it. My soul missed it. We did natural movement dance, which is brought here from England.
Wonderful.
Oh, and it frees the spirit. One has to do it to know how wonderful it is
Exactly.
to move again. It is so natural to us to be moving, to be dancing.
Absolutely. And unfortunately, we live in a society in which it's very frowned upon, especially for the male, to perform with dance or to get involved in dance, and yet movement is such an essential part of
Yes.
sports, and sports can be a kind of dance, and there are exercises and things that you can do. So the kind of, at least for the males that may be put off by the word dance, we can at least use movement and exercise that will do the same thing.
And Ted also, of course, in balances with Kung Fu. Very
Right.
macho.
Very
so
much
there
so.
you go.
Well, and so many of the ancient tradition martial arts are based
yes.
upon how animals moved and protected themselves, and things that we can do. And we're living at a time in which we know that different physiological movements will affect different systems of the body. And we know that every time there's a muscular contraction of the body, there's an electrical stimulus. And so because we are a biochemical electromagnetic energy system, can use movement to change our electrical patterns, to strengthen, to build, to heal. There's just so much that's available to us today.
It's wonderful. You have a whole series on how-to books, but we're going to take a break. And when
Yes.
we come back, we're going to talk with Ted Andrews about how-to in many different areas of our life. We are talking with Ted Andrews, author, teacher, and storyteller. And as a teacher, you did the series on how-to.
On how-tos.
Okay. Now, how to develop and use psychometry, for example. This whole series, tell me about that and why you decided you needed to do it in this format.
Well, I think one of the things that I found as I was going around and teaching, and I began to hear more and more people referring, oh, well, you can do it because you're gifted or you were born this way. And that statement's always made me cringe, because I'm a firm believer that I'm not doing anything that anyone else can't do if they know how to do it and know how to put forth. And so what I decided to do is to work on the how-tos and show people that they can do it for themselves. And it was also a way, because I was getting tired of doing readings for people, that I thought, let me just show them how to do it for themselves. That way they'll quit coming to me.
Yeah.
It didn't really work that way, but they just came more. But what I found was that it began to show people that they could do it for themselves. And they began to recognize, oh yes, gosh, this really works. And it began to take it out of the realm of just the gifted and the few were capable of doing this, and help to teach them that it was something that everyone has the potential to work with.
And I think that's what's so important about the spiritual path, is that
Right.
it be empowering. That you don't want to have the guru. It's supposed to be
Absolutely.
you are your own best teacher and you can do it.
Right. And you won't do it the way I do it, but I can show you how you can do it in the way that's going to be best for you and for your life circumstances.
I also noticed that you have support tapes that go
Yes, I
with
do.
specific books. If someone needs to have then an awareness through a meditation of how they can meet their spirit animal or something
Right.
like
So
that.
one of the things I did is some of the primary exercises out of the books is, because I work with music, I compose music that I know would enhance the exercise and the imagery within it. so that they could have a more tangible experience. Because it's nice to do meditations where you go off in the ozones a little bit, but I'm very pragmatic. You know, show me that this is actually going to work and how it's going to play out, and show me in a very tangible way. And so the exercises are all designed to elicit very tangible results and effects when they are performed in conjunction with the tapes.
But you composed the music.
Yes, I do.
Oh, the Renaissance man again. There you go. You mentioned just in an offhand way that you do readings for people. Now, if you do a reading,
I used to.
Okay, when you did, what was your technique or style, or how did you read?
I would usually start by reading a person's aura, looking at the aura and talking about the colors and the variations of colors and what that would indicate. And again, this is one of the books that's probably the most popular, is How to See and Read the Aura. And I think it's because more than anything else, seeing the aura is a physical condition, and it's the interpreting, though, where the metaphysical aspect comes in. And anyone can be taught, and can learn how to actually see the aura.
Okay, and so that's one of the most popular.
And that's one of the more popular ones.
Okay, and one of the books that is on the bestseller list, Animals Speak.
Animals Speak, yes.
Oh, yes. And I look at it as kind of a reference book, but tell us a little bit about that. And that's the one we have right between us here, this Animals Speak, the spiritual and magical powers of creatures great and small.
Well, the Animals Speak is, of course, one of my treasures, and animals and nature is still the one gift that I give to myself. It's the one way in which I keep myself balanced. I've worked with animals or around animals most of my life. I'm still associated with the Nature Center back in Ohio. I work in their animal rehab program. I work as one of their trail guides, taking groups of kids out into nature. I have state and federal permits to work with birds of prey, and so I do a lot of educational programs. And everybody has a story about animals. Everyone has something in regards to animals. And again, it's one of those areas where if we look at how it was taught and worked with in all traditions, we find that phenomena of common threads. That there was a recognition that there was some spirit associated with every animal. You didn't have to believe that the animal had a creative intelligence, but you could recognize that some spiritual force had brought that animal to play within your life. But you had to study the animal as a way of understanding what it meant, and that meant you had to learn everything about it. Today, there'd been a tendency, or at least in the last decade or two, a tendency to get very superstitious in interpreting the animals. And so one of the reasons I wanted to write the book was to get us away from the superstitious aspect by learning about the animal. For example, there's an old superstition about Valentine's Day that says whatever bird you first encounter on Valentine's Day will tell you the kind of individual that you will eventually marry.
Oh, that's fun.
If it's a blackbird or a crow, it's someone who's very mystical or serious and somber. If it's a goldfinch, it's a wealthy individual. If it's a cardinal or a red bird, it's someone who's full of vitality and sexuality. If it's a woodpecker, you're never getting married. It's a superstition. It's not based upon anything. And so the book is designed to present the basic characteristics based upon the actual habitats and behaviors of the animals. And when we use those, then we find that, wow, this is really accurate. But this is something that every society and every tradition upon the planet did.
So you researched then, again, to get that information, to compile this as a reference book. So if someone sees the cardinal, they can open up to the cardinal, and then they can get what has been passed down generation to generation.
Point. And it's all based upon the actual behaviors and habitats of the animal itself, because that's where the true and the accurate interpretation comes.
And then, as far as like when people, if they were to find their own what is called a totem animal, what does that mean, and how are they empowered by that?
Well, a totem technically is anything of the natural world that has significance for us. It can be a flower, it can be a tree, it can be an animal. The book deals predominantly with the idea of animal totems or spirit animals. And there's always been a belief that animals and their spirit will watch over us. Now, a lot of people believe that there's just one particular animal, but this was something that was not taught anywhere, that there was a whole variety of animals that would watch over us, some that would be with us throughout our entire life to serve as guides and protectors. And it's because nothing exists in nature by itself. There's always going to be more than one. So for example, the grass absorbs the sunlight. Grasshopper feeds off the grass, frog eats a grasshopper, snake eats a frog, hawk eats a snake. Everything is connected to everything else. So you're always going to have more than one animal that is there that will serve as a protector and a guide. We may have an animal that will show up just to give us a clue as to best how to accomplish a particular task, or to resolve an issue, or to accomplish a goal.
Okay, so if we were aware and in tune, we could be then noticing what's going on around us
Right.
in nature, and then that could give us some clues as to the next
And
step.
that gives us a clue. So one of the things, if you have a problem, take a walk in nature. What aspect of nature stands out for you? Anytime I teach a new workshop for the very first time, I pay attention to what animal shows up. I was teaching a workshop about 8 years ago on spirit mask, animal mask, and how to make them and how to use them in ceremony. And it was in Columbus, Ohio, which is about an hour and a half from where I live. And I drove up there, and I didn't see a bird, I didn't see an insect, I didn't see anything. And I got there, and I was a little paranoid. And there were 50 people there, and we made beautiful masks. We did a great ceremony. And when I left, it was after dark, and I was just absolutely confused. And I'm pulling down the street, and my headlights caught eye shine. Now, eye shine is due to a chemical that most animals have in their eyes that causes a reflection of the light. It's a chemical called tapetum lucidum. And if you know and can recognize the color of the eye shine, you can identify the animal, because different animals have it. I wasn't paying attention, but I slowed down figuring it was a cat or dog. And as I got to the corner, there's a raccoon sitting on a sewer grate watching me drive by. I'm 3/4 of the way home before I have one of my many forehead slapping experiences. Raccoons, mask, duh.
Perfect.
But they are also very gifted at working their paws, and we
Sure.
were making masks.
Yes.
Now every time I teach that workshop, they're out. They're also nocturnal, so it wasn't appropriate I see them during the day.
Of course, yeah. So that is all logical. And
Right.
it also then just confirms what you already knew, and
What you
that's
already
part
knew.
of the gift. Yes.
Yeah, because nature's talking to us all the time. We've just forgotten how to listen.
And I think I like your idea that we need to go back to the woods to find out.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's excellent.
Absolutely.
Now, you do have another series of books that you can't wait to write.
I do?
Yes. Well, I just read some of the titles of
Oh,
upcoming
okay.
books. So that means that this continues.
Oh, this continues, absolutely. I have, usually while one is being published, I've got 3 or 4 others going. And so I have another book coming out in November. It's a follow-up to my very first book, which was Simplified Magic, which was an introduction to the Kabbalah. And this is called More Simplified Magic, and it takes it the next step. And so,
Well, what a blessing for all of us, and I want to thank you for being with us
oh,
today.
it's a great pleasure to be here.
And I just am so excited about all of these books to read. Wealth of information here. So Ted Andrews, bless you and thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay. If you will stay tuned, we will give you an address and telephone number where you can be in touch with Ted. Talking with Ted Andrews has given us some insights how we may live in balance. Fascinating information, books that we can read, another step along that path. I thank you for being with us today, learning how you too may live in balance on Shakti-Hill. Until next time, may you be well, happy, and peaceful. Love and light.